Have you ever noticed that the more available you are, the less people seem to value you, the more you sacrifice, the more you forgive, the more you put everyone else first, the more invisible you become? At first, you think you're being kind, but then something strange happens. People interrupt you, ignore your opinions, expect favors, cross your boundaries without hesitation, and somehow, you're always the one left carrying the weight. Here's the truth almost nobody wants to admit. Most people don't consciously decide to use you. They simply respond to the signals you broadcast every single day. And if those signals say, "There are no consequences for disrespecting me," that's exactly how you'll be treated. Today, we're going to uncover the psychological pattern that keeps intelligent, hard-working people trapped in cycles of exploitation. We'll explore why kindness without strength often attracts manipulation, why people instinctively test your limits, and the one shift that instantly changes the way others perceive you. Because respect isn't something people generously hand out, it's something your behavior quietly teaches them. And once you understand that, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. For centuries, philosophers have debated what gives one person influence while another is constantly overlooked. Machiavelli believed power wasn't created by appearances, it was created by perception. Carl Jung believed every person carries a hidden side they refuse to acknowledge. Modern psychology reveals something equally uncomfortable. People constantly evaluate risk, not consciously, but instinctively. Every interaction becomes a silent calculation. Can I ignore this person? Can I take advantage of them? Will there be consequences? The answers aren't found in your words. They're found in your patterns. That's why two equally intelligent people can enter the same room, yet one immediately commands respect, while the other becomes everyone's emotional dumping ground. The difference is rarely confidence. It's psychological positioning. Throughout this video, you'll discover why many good-hearted people accidentally train others to disrespect them, how hidden beliefs shape the treatment you receive, and how one internal shift can completely transform every relationship in your life. Because the problem isn't that people are naturally cruel. The problem is that human nature constantly tests what it believes it can get away with. And if you never establish limits, the testing never stops. Before we continue, if you're interested in psychology, strategy, self-mastery, and timeless lessons inspired by thinkers like Machiavelli, Carl Jung, Sun Tzu, and Stoic philosophy, make sure you subscribe. Every week, we explore the hidden dynamics of power, influence, discipline, and human behavior, always through deep psychological analysis designed to help you become stronger, wiser, and impossible to manipulate. Now, let's begin with the first mistake almost everyone makes. Most people believe exploitation begins with selfish people. It doesn't. It begins with invisible permission. Long before someone interrupts you, long before they ask for one more favor, long before they expect you to sacrifice your own needs, your mind has already taught them that it's acceptable, not through words, through repetition. Every unnecessary apology, every uncomfortable yes, every moment you silence yourself just to avoid conflict becomes another piece of evidence. Human beings are remarkable pattern recognition machines. We constantly scan our environment looking for consistency. Who can be challenged? Who pushes back? Who avoids confrontation? Who always gives in? Most of this happens below conscious awareness. People don't wake up thinking, Today, I'm going to take advantage of someone. Instead, they unconsciously discover who offers the least resistance. Think about electricity. Current always follows the easiest path. Human behavior works the same way. If one person never says no, never expresses disappointment, never enforces consequences, their emotional energy becomes the easiest path. And eventually, everyone begins traveling through it. This isn't because humanity is uniquely evil, it's because the brain is efficient. Why negotiate with someone who never negotiates? Why respect a boundary that never exists? Why invest equally in a relationship where one person keeps investing regardless? Little by little, your generosity stops looking like generosity. It starts looking like obligation. And obligations rarely inspire gratitude. They create expectation. Notice how quickly extraordinary effort becomes normal. The first time you solve someone's problem, they appreciate it. The 10th time, they expect it. The 100th time, they become irritated if you don't. This is one of the strangest paradoxes in psychology. The more predictable your sacrifice becomes, the less visible it is. Your value disappears into familiarity. People begin treating your kindness like running water, essential, useful, but unnoticed until it stops. This explains why many deeply compassionate people secretly feel exhausted, not because they're giving, but because they're giving without creating value through choice. Choice creates respect. Compulsion creates dependency. There's an enormous difference. When someone helps because they genuinely want to, it inspires appreciation. When someone helps because they're afraid to disappoint others, it inspires consumption. Your behavior silently communicates your motivation. People sense desperation long before they can explain it. And desperation changes every social dynamic, because underneath constant people-pleasing often hides a dangerous belief. If I become useful enough, no one will abandon me. It sounds loving, it sounds noble, but psychologically, it's fear wearing the mask of kindness. The problem is that fear never creates healthy relationships. It creates transactions. You begin exchanging pieces of yourself. For temporary acceptance, you trade honesty for harmony, boundaries for approval, authenticity for belonging. At first, the exchange seems worth it. Everyone likes you, everyone smiles, everyone says you're such a good person. But slowly, a strange resentment begins growing inside. You feel unseen, unappreciated, emotionally bankrupt. You wonder, after everything I've done, why doesn't anyone do the same for me? Because most people never agreed to the invisible deal you created. You expected reciprocity. They simply accepted availability. Those are not the same thing. This realization hurts because it forces you to confront something uncomfortable. Maybe people aren't treating you poorly because they're unusually selfish. Maybe they're responding exactly to the standards you've consistently demonstrated. That idea feels brutal, but it's also incredibly liberating. Because if your patterns created the problem, new patterns can create a completely different future. And that's where everything begins to change. Because the next principle reveals why the human brain instinctively respects people who are willing to disappoint others, rather than constantly disappointing themselves. Imagine two people entering the exact same negotiation. The first desperately needs the outcome. The second is prepared to lose it. Who holds the real power? Most people instinctively answer, the smarter one. But history and psychology suggest something different. Power rarely belongs to the loudest person. It belongs to the least dependent. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The individual who cannot be controlled by fear becomes incredibly difficult to manipulate. Fear is the invisible chain behind almost every unhealthy relationship. Fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing people. When those fears control your decisions, you don't choose your actions anymore. Your fears choose them for you. And people notice, not consciously, instinctively. Have you ever met someone who never seems desperate for approval? They don't interrupt to prove themselves. They don't overshare. They don't chase attention. They don't panic when someone disagrees with them. Ironically, these are often the people others admire most. Not because they're perfect, because they're emotionally independent. The human mind associates independence with strength. Scarcity creates value. This principle exists everywhere. Rare art, limited editions, exclusive memberships. Anything easily available quickly becomes ordinary. Relationships follow the same psychological rule. If your time is always available, it loses value. If your attention can always be accessed, it stops feeling valuable. If your presence never has limits, people unconsciously stop appreciating it. This doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming intentional. There is an enormous difference. Many people confuse boundaries with hostility. They're nothing alike. A boundary doesn't attack another person. It simply defines where your responsibility ends. Think of a well-built house. Its walls don't exist because the owner hates the outside world. They exist because valuable things deserve protection. Yet emotionally, many people leave every door unlocked. Everyone enters, everyone leaves, everyone rearranges the furniture, and somehow they wonder why they never feel safe. Without boundaries, you don't create kindness, you create accessibility. Accessibility without standards eventually becomes exploitation. This is why saying no feels so terrifying. It threatens the identity you've spent years constructing. The agreeable friend, the perfect employee, the reliable partner, the person who never creates problems. But here's the hidden cost. Every unnecessary yes quietly becomes a no to yourself. Every promise you make against your own well-being sends the same message to your subconscious. My needs matter less. Repeat that message long enough, and eventually, you believe it. That's where self-respect begins to disappear. Not because someone stole it, because you slowly traded it away. Notice something fascinating. The people who respect themselves rarely need to announce it. They don't constantly tell others, "You should value me." Their behavior says it first. They leave conversations that become disrespectful. They refuse requests that violate their principles. They remain calm under pressure. Most importantly, they accept that disappointing someone today is sometimes necessary to avoid betraying themselves tomorrow. This is emotional maturity, not aggression, not arrogance, just clarity. Because every meaningful relationship requires one uncomfortable truth. Someone will eventually dislike your boundaries, and that's okay. In fact, it's unavoidable. The version of you that everyone approves of is usually the version sacrificing the most. Real respect begins the moment approval stops becoming your highest priority. That realization changes everything. Because once you're no longer afraid of temporary discomfort, manipulation loses most of its power. And that leads us to the deepest psychological mistake almost everyone makes: confusing being needed with being valued. There is a silent trap that keeps millions of people emotionally imprisoned. It sounds harmless, even noble. It whispers, "As long as they need me, they'll never leave me." At first, it feels comforting. You become the one everyone depends on, the problem solver, the reliable friend, the employee who always says yes, the partner who sacrifices without complaint. People call you whenever something goes wrong, and for a while, that feels like love. But it isn't. It's dependence. And dependence is not the same as respect. Think carefully. A person can depend on their alarm clock every morning. That doesn't mean they appreciate it. They simply expect it to work. The moment it stops, they become frustrated, not grateful for everything it has done before. This is exactly what happens in many relationships. The more indispensable you become, the less visible your effort becomes. People stop seeing your sacrifices. They only notice the rare moments you refuse. Suddenly, you're selfish, you're different, you've changed. No, you've simply stopped being endlessly available. The uncomfortable truth is this: many people don't notice your value until they experience your absence. Human psychology is deeply influenced by contrast. We rarely appreciate what is constantly present: health, freedom, time, silence, even love. Only when something disappears does the mind calculate what it was actually worth. This is why absence has always been more persuasive than explanation. You can spend hours explaining your exhaustion. Many people won't understand. But remove your energy. Remove your attention, remove your constant availability, and suddenly everyone notices, not because you've become more valuable overnight, because your value is finally measurable. Machiavelli understood something few people are willing to admit. Power often begins where dependency ends. The less desperate you become for a specific outcome, the harder you are to manipulate. Manipulators don't chase strong boundaries. They search for emotional hunger. They instinctively look for people who cannot tolerate rejection, people who need approval, need reassurance, need everyone to stay happy, because those needs become handles, and every handle can be pulled. Notice how emotional manipulation almost always follows the same script. If you loved me, if you cared, after everything I've done. These sentences aren't arguments. They're hooks. They attempt to make you feel responsible for someone else's emotional state. The moment you accept that responsibility, you've surrendered your freedom. Emotionally healthy people understand something different. Compassion does not require self-abandonment. You can care deeply about someone without becoming responsible for every feeling they experience. That's a boundary many people never learn. Instead, they become emotional caretakers, constantly monitoring everyone's mood, trying to fix every conflict, prevent every disappointment, carry every burden. Eventually, they forget how to recognize their own emotions. Their identity becomes built around one question: what does everyone else need from me? Rarely asking, what do I need from myself? That question changes everything, because the strongest people aren't those who never help others. They're the ones who help from choice, not fear, from abundance, not obligation, from self-respect, not self-erasure. And here's the paradox. The moment your happiness no longer depends on being needed, people begin valuing your presence far more. Why? Because now your attention becomes intentional. Your kindness becomes authentic. Your generosity becomes meaningful. It is no longer automatic. It becomes earned. That changes every relationship you have. But there is one final transformation. the one that separates people who are constantly manipulated from those whose presence naturally commands respect. And it begins with mastering something far more powerful than confidence. It begins with mastering yourself. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must make a decision, not between success and failure, not between wealth and poverty, but between comfort and self-respect. Most people choose comfort. They tolerate disrespect because confrontation feels uncomfortable. They stay in draining relationships because loneliness feels frightening. They remain in environments that slowly destroy their confidence because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Day after day, they trade pieces of themselves for temporary peace, until one day, they no longer recognize the person staring back in the mirror. The tragedy isn't that someone used them. The tragedy is that they abandoned themselves long before anyone else did. Machiavelli understood that power begins with internal sovereignty. A person who governs themselves cannot easily be governed by others. That is the foundation of real influence, not intimidation, not manipulation, self-mastery. Because the strongest presence in any room isn't the loudest voice, it's the person whose emotions cannot be purchased. Think about that. What can someone use to control you? Fear. Only if you're terrified of losing something. Guilt. Only if you believe your worth depends on pleasing everyone. Anger. Only if you react before thinking. Approval. Only if you need strangers to confirm your identity. Every emotional dependency becomes another chain. Break the dependency, and the chain disappears with it. This is why emotionally disciplined people seem almost impossible to manipulate. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't chase people who leave. They don't beg to be understood. They don't argue endlessly with those committed to misunderstanding them. Instead, they observe. They pause. They choose their response instead of surrendering to their reaction. That pause is where true power lives. Most manipulation depends on urgency. Answer now. Choose now. Explain yourself. Prove that you care. But emotionally sovereign people understand something profound. Not every invitation deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every battle deserves a soldier. Sometimes the strongest move is walking away without needing the final word. Because peace is more valuable than winning arguments you'll forget next week. As Carl Jung suggested, maturity isn't the absence of darkness. It's becoming conscious enough that your darkness no longer controls your choices. Real strength isn't pretending anger doesn't exist. It's refusing to let anger become your master. Real confidence isn't believing you're superior. It's knowing your worth remains intact, whether others recognize it or not. This is why the people who command the most respect rarely spend their lives demanding it. They've already given it to themselves. And once that happens, everything changes. Your standards rise, your relationships improve, the manipulators quietly disappear, the genuine people remain, not because you forced anyone to stay, but because you've finally become someone who no longer negotiates away their own dignity. So remember this: people don't decide your value, your daily choices do. Every boundary you enforce, every unnecessary apology you refuse to make, every moment you choose honesty over approval, you become a different person, not colder, not crueler, simply stronger. Because the greatest transformation isn't learning how to control other people, it's reaching the point where they can no longer control you. If this message resonated with you, comment below. I choose self-respect. I'd like to know who is ready to stop living for approval and start living with purpose. And if you know someone who constantly gives everything to others while forgetting themselves, share this video with them. It might be exactly what they need to hear today. If you enjoyed this journey into psychology, Machiavellian strategy, and the hidden dynamics of human behavior, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore timeless lessons from Machiavelli, Carl Jung, Stoicism, and modern psychology to help you build discipline, emotional mastery, and unshakable confidence. Remember, the world doesn't change when people finally recognize your value. The world changes the moment you stop abandoning it yourself. Until next time, stay calm, stay disciplined, and above all, stay unreadable.